Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's session on AI and analytics within internal audit. We've got a fantastic turnout today. We have well over 100 people from all over the globe who are signed up and are joining us for this. And the question that we'll be talking about is how to integrate or further integrate emerging technology, including AI and analytics, into the internal audit plan. So, by way of a quick introduction, my name is Chris Smith. I know some of you very well, and some of you we haven't had the pleasure of speaking before. But I run the audit, risk, and compliance practice at Ultim Consulting. That's an international recruitment business, and our main line of work is recruitment and headhunting into businesses around the world to help them find top-tier talent for their teams. Beyond that, though, we believe in adding value to the communities and the markets that we work within, which is really where this Ultim Connect initiative comes from. In short, we are doing what we can to connect you with your peers in other businesses, other countries around the world, and also with subject matter experts like Steve, who will be giving a talk today. If you'd like to learn more about this community and the networking, what we're trying to do, or indeed if you have any ideas for us, we're always more than happy to listen. So please do just drop me a line. Little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We are going to be recording this session, so you will get a link for the recording sent to you likely next week. We're anticipating that this will take somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour, with time for some Q&A at the end. And to that point, if you look towards the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A button there. So if, as Steve is giving his presentation, you do have any ideas, please do drop them in as we go, and we'll do our best to get to them at the end. So Steve, I'll give you a quick kind of run up an intro before you get started. So Steve, our speaker today, is a director of data analytics in internal audit with over 25 years of experience, spanning professional services and corporate leadership. He has over 10 years of experience specifically in building and leading analytics functions and transforming those functions through AI integration and those analytics. Today, his work focuses on modernizing audit operations through those tech-enabled and data-driven assurance activities. So hopefully that's on the money, Steve. We're thrilled to have you here. So I'll hand over to you. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it, Chris. And thank you all for joining us on this lovely Friday morning. I hope it is warmer where you are than where I am. Put together an agenda. You can see these are based on some initial discussions I had with Chris and his team. And they gathered some feedback from some or most of you about the things that most interested you. And to the degree that I can speak to those things directly, I've tried to do so. All of the things you see on the agenda, AI is kind of a through line, right? It's sort of the new big thing in analytics. And I will be talking specifically, but not exclusively, about AI, because frankly, AI it's a new technology, but there's a lot that's very similar to previous technologies that we have all seen. I'm assuming everyone here has been in this field in internal audit and dealt with technology for some time. You've probably seen a few cycles of, hey, here's the great new flavor of the week, and it sounds great and it's wonderful. And then you learn about it and you find out, yeah, it has some great things to it and some capabilities that you find useful, but there's limitations and challenges and so forth. And I'm going to talk a little bit about those. So let's start with auditing with technology, a brief overview. Back in 1999, and I picked that year because that happened to be when I started working as an internal auditor. We did everything in Microsoft Word. We printed them out, we bound them up, and we left them in our files at the end of the audit until the next time we did them. And then by 2009, we'd gotten all the way to doing their work in Microsoft Word and Excel, and then leaving them on a file share and leaving them there until we needed to go in and manually look for things for the next audit we're doing them. By 2019, we had gotten to the point where we were doing all our work in Microsoft Excel and Word and leaving them in a GRC tool until the next time we needed to look these things up. And 2025, we're doing pretty much the same thing. This is a common cycle. I'm going to argue today, and these are my opinions, not those of my employer. I'm going to share with you what I think we should be doing and what we can do to help our organizations do what we do better, not just internal audit-wise, but in general. Internal audit is one of those functions that can see literally every part of an organization. We are in a unique position to help our business partners do what they do better. I know that they don't always see it that way. I'm sure all of you have been in challenging meetings where you're trying to get through a finding that you had and you're getting arguments and back and forth. We should at our best be seen as partners with our business partners. We're trying to help them do what they need to do. Yes, there's some compliance to it, but there's also process improvement. And usually, at least in my experience, the process improvement piece is the piece that rarely gets addressed because the business functions are saying, hey, you know what? We just went through an audit. We have to do certain things, so we're going to do those things. But all this process improvement stuff, we don't have time for that. If you do not take the time, you will never have the time. So one of the things I will be arguing today to you is that we need, as leaders, to commit to taking the time and making the time to figure out how to do things better. All of the tools that I will talk about, all of the approaches, everything are completely useless to us as internal auditors, to our organizations, if we do not take the time to use them well, if we do not take the time to understand them, if we do not take the time to lay the groundwork and plow the field so that what we plant there can grow properly. Some things never change. We are working with AI now. We used to talk about automation and data science. We talked about using GRC tools. We talked about using file shares. We talked about using ledger paper, right? If you keep going back, there's a couple of things that remain true. Garbage in, garbage out. Any application you buy, anything that your teams do, if you do not have proper inputs, your outputs will be wrong. You will give bad advice. You'll reach bad conclusions. I know this is obvious to all of you, but it gets even more critical in the age of AI, because AI, not only is it a rather different way of doing things, not terribly different, but it enables things to be done faster at a greater volume. So processing garbage faster, not something we want to do. And also choosing the right people and tools for the job. That has always been something that we need to do. What does that look like? What does choosing the right people and the right tools for the job mean? Well, it used to be, when I graduated university, it was, oh, hey, did you get this degree from this university? Maybe you had some internships, and those are the kinds of things that they look for in new staff. As I moved through my career and started working in analytics and seeing who was successful and who was not, one of the things that I learned is that I was not necessarily looking in the right places for talent. I'm going to give an example right now from probably 15 years ago when I first started putting teams together and being hired to specifically build a team. And it was a very small consulting firm, and I had come from a mid-tier firm. So I was used to having a certain number of resources. I was used to going to university and being able to credibly speak to the students who were graduating. They knew who we were. We had billboards, we had marketing materials, we had teams on the ground there year round. So they knew who we were. We sponsored events. Now I'm at a small firm. I go down there to my own alma mater, embarrassingly, and I get out there with my new firm banner behind me in the Career Center, and they have no idea who I am. And they have no idea why they should talk to me. And I can be as persuasive as I want, but if I am coming from a very small firm they've never heard of, and I'm next to Deloitte and across from PwC and just down the corridor from KPMG, I'm going to have a real hard time impressing the graduates that the larger firms are going after. BMO Harris Bank or JP Morgan Chase or any of these large firms, they are known quantities. So I had to get real creative. I can't necessarily get the attention of these students. What am I going to do? This was a serious problem. My boss at the time was a former director at PwC. He and I had mapped out the strategy of who we were going to go get, and it failed horribly because it had not occurred to us, you know what? These kids don't know who we are, and they won't talk to us. Or they'll talk to us, but they wouldn't accept positions with us. So we had to change the way we recruited. This was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me, because now I have to figure out not what's the profile of the candidate that I want in terms of their CV and all that. I have to figure out what specific skill sets do I want? What do I really need this person to be able to do, or to be able to learn, more importantly, and where can I find that? So I had to go fishing in some very strange little rivers to find the right talent. As it turns out, not all of the best audit candidates know that they are going to be great auditors one day when they start college. Some of them start out going, hey, I'm going to get my accounting degree from this school, I'm going to do these things. And they end up, and Deloitte looks at that and says, hey, that's what we want. Some of them go off to, this is true, photography major, economics major, people all over the map. When I was telling my wife, who also happens to be an accounting professional, has been doing this a long time, came through public accounting, and I told her what I was doing, she said, you're insane. You're not going to be hiring auditors with photography degrees. I hired an auditor with a photography degree because she had a creative problem-solving mindset. She came to our attention because she worked for a small mom and pop shop, and she had built them a Microsoft Access-based application that was curing or alleviating a particular pain point with the business. She had no training in this. She literally got a book from the library, looked it up, and this is before all the books were online. So she had a physical paper book, size of a telephone book. She taught herself to do this stuff, solved a real-world business problem. She pitched herself to us with that. We hired her. She is now a senior manager at BMO Harris. Before that, she was a manager at KPMG. Before that, she was with us. But she turned out to be amazing at her job. Some of the more technical people we hired, you'll see this, and this is key. You're going to want more technical people who are comfortable with tools. Most students coming out of school are. Most people in their careers who've kept up are. But there's one thing that we have to accept as internal auditors, whether we like it or not. In this year, 2026, we are a software development shop, whether we like it or not. Every time I've said this, people argue with me, but it is absolutely true. You are developing software. Every time you do anything, if you write, certainly writing Python code, certainly developing any kind of macro in Microsoft Office, certainly doing any kind of formal process flow, you are building a workflow. And what is software if not a workflow, right? You're checking to make sure that the outputs are exactly what you want, that there's no edge cases that you've missed. We have to start thinking like that because the tools that we're using are getting more sophisticated. We're having to chain them together. I'm sure everyone here, if you've worked in an IT audit, you've had cases where you're pulling data out of a system, you're doing some analysis on it, you're identifying outliers, you're defining what an outlier should even look like. You're evaluating the results. You're confirming the results back with your business partner to say, okay, is what we found really representative of the state of things, or did we get a rule wrong somewhere? Okay, let's go back and iterate. We are a software development shop, and we have to be willing to admit that. Along that same line, process thinking, right? Now, this sounds obvious. In internal audit, that's the first thing you do is you look at the process you're going to be auditing. You gain an understanding of the control environment. You talk to the business owner. You find out who their stakeholders are, what those stakeholders use the outputs for, all of it. In order to have these processes work, though, you have to have valid inputs. We just talked about it, garbage in, garbage out. And you have to understand what happens along the way. This is not just limited to the business processes themselves. There's a broader set of processes out there that have to work. So the culture of the organization, This is important when it comes to AI adoption. When we start looking at how an organization uses any kind of technology, but especially AI, we have to look at every single process that they have, how those processes work, where the inputs from them come from, what is done with them along the way, what happens to them when they're done. You can use analytical tools, and we've been using analytical tools since the 1980s to do some analysis with the tools here and there. And we've gotten some good results, right? When you first started seeing ACL in the 1980s, wide use of SQL in the early 2000s, it gave us a greater ability to gather data in, do some analysis on it. Microsoft Excel, of course, the whole time. People have been using Excel since 1995. We still do. I'm going to make the argument today that Excel and Word, and I've already alluded to this, Excel and Word are fine for what they do, but they have an intrinsic flaw, and that is whatever you put into them dies on the vine. It just sits there in a share folder, and the only way to get information out of it is to have somebody go pull it out. Excel was not designed to be a database. Microsoft Word was not designed to be a content management system. They just weren't. Now we have SharePoint and tools like that, and tools that will go into SharePoint and find these documents and open them up and try to get data out of them. You're adding a whole lot of complexity and introducing the potential for error. AI has been pitched as a tool to help mitigate this, and it can to a degree. But I'm going to argue here that using AI as a tool to stick on top of a mess to help you get a better look at the mess should not be the end state. Use AI to help clean up that mess, and once you've cleaned it up, remove the mess itself and replace it with something cleaner and better. We are talking about data hygiene. Where is the data stored? How is it stored? If it's in Excel, and I will give it to, I'll leave it to your intuition. Would you rather have data stored in Microsoft Excel in a bunch of files, even if they've got a good naming convention or the right version is out there and it's in a file hierarchy that's well defined that everybody uses the same way, which every shop I've ever seen tries to do, and it never works, but let's pretend it does. Is that a better solution than a relational database or a single file source of truth? No, it can't be. Because if you have a relational data, a well-designed, well-controlled relational database or set of data tables, similar to back when we were still using mainframe machines, right? Those are all flat files in there, but they're well maintained and they're maintained in a disciplined, structured way. We can only access them through acceptable channels. We can only do certain operations on them. All of these things matter to us. We are gathering data when we go out and do all of our work with the organization on the risk posture of the organization. We're saying at this point in time, we audited this thing because we identified this risk, and we want to see how is that risk going to manifest itself? What is the likelihood of it manifesting? What will the impact of that manifestation be? What detective controls do we have to see when it happens? What preventative controls do we have to make sure it doesn't happen? Right? That's what we're doing. We have GRC systems to store all that information and then to help us do it. Why would we not want to have as much of the hard work that our people do stored in data so that you could turn that insight, that learning, into actionable data? Your people are your most expensive resource, right? The time they spend on audits is your biggest cost. It doesn't matter what tools they're using. You can use AI, you can use Claude, a $20 a month Claude subscription. You can use a Microsoft Copilot, $20 per employee per month. You can get an organizational Claude license for Claude Code for $200 a month. Whatever it is, that's nothing compared to what it costs to have your people out there working with the business and using these tools. They learn all these things by doing their audits, but then everything they learn goes into an audit report and work papers that are then put somewhere that they cannot be readily accessed. You can have all the fancy tools, but if that data quality is not good, you're nowhere. data that is stored in Microsoft Word documents and Excel documents and PDFs, that's not good data quality. Right? It's great for human beings to look at. It's not great for any kind of systemic usage. Right? If you want to run some kind of an automated risk assessment process, you're not going to be able to do it well on a corpus of data that is not stored appropriately. So, what is the value proposition for all of this? What am I going to try to convince you of today? Stop wasting your smart, imaginative, highly valuable, and expensive employees' time on repetitive, boring tasks that add minimal value. I said that here now. That has been the driving force behind what I have been doing with teams for the last 10, 15 years. 10 of them actually recruiting people, hiring them, and training them. The 5 years before that, I'm part of the team and watching to see what really didn't particularly work. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that actually means. So people and tools. I've got a set of notes here, so forgive me while I scroll down a bit. Here we go. So when you start looking at tools, in the past, you'd have vendors coming out to talk about what their tool can do. Some of you may have heard of ACL, Audit Command Language. It was the greatest tool of 1985. There's still companies using it today. It's been rebranded, but it's still fundamentally the same. Python came out of universities in the late 90s, early 2000s. Now it's a huge data science language. A great tool, but again, you need a certain amount of skill to run it. There are also larger tools, Blackline for reconciliations. All of you, I'm sure, have been on calls where you've had a vendor trying to convince you that their tool was going to solve your problems. It was going to untangle the mess that you had. It was going to give you actionable insights. I've seen that phrase bandied around so much in vendor conversations. And these tools, I'm not saying these tools are bad, but every conversation like that I have ever been involved in on either side of the table has meant that there is a certain amount of prerequisite work that needs to be done. So one, you have to have people who understand this landscape and are not going to just be focused on the tool, right? If you hire people who are just, hey, I'm a Python developer, but I am not a creative problem solver. I don't have sort of that curiosity that drives a good software developer or a good auditor. They're not going to be able to help you, no matter what their credentials, no matter what their degrees, no matter what their tool certifications. So when you're hiring people, you want their attitude, not just experience and qualifications. We start talking about advanced analytics, machine learning, same thing. Even though a lot of these tools are open source or little to no cost, you still have to have an ability to use these tools. You have to be able to deploy people. We talked about that. People are able to use them creatively. I want to give you an example. Some of you may use a tool called Alteryx. It's great in that it's got a user interface that's very clean, it's accessible. I call that the gateway drug to analytics because you can drag and drop things, you can connect nodes of different functionality to do ETL operations, to do transformations, to do machine learning. It's really good. It's horribly expensive for a license. And once you're in, it's very difficult to get out because you can't export the Alteryx workflows to something else. So you're kind of stuck. And somebody who starts using it, it enables them to be very effective very quickly and have access to all kinds of advanced tools very quickly. But you also run the risk of those individuals not able to understand what they're doing. So, for example, if I am having an auditor go in and use Alteryx to try to analyze a data set, and they start lingering on the data science menu of Alteryx and they start picking through algorithms, it's possible they'll pick one that's appropriate. But if they don't really understand what the particular thing is, and they don't stop and go back and look and say, okay, I need to understand what multidimensional scaling is before I just plug and chug and see what I come up with, you run the risk of getting poor results or invalid results, and worse, wasting time. For all of this, whether you're using whatever tool you're using, including AI tools, And we will talk more about AI in a few minutes. I want to get through the traditional analytics before I talk about the brave new world of AI. You needed something that you need now as well. All of this has happened before and it will happen again. AI is nothing more than another tool, but it has some of the same requirements. And one crucial requirement that it has in common with every other tool you've ever seen and every other approach, any machine learning, 5 years ago, machine learning was all the rage. Before that, it was data analytics. All of that required good data, a solid basis of data. In my work, when I was writing applications to do data analysis, and a lot of it was reconciliation work for internal audit shops, when I worked in professional services, I would go to clients and they would say, hey, my financial system of record has depreciation of X on our fixed assets, but my fixed asset tracking application, I can't tie the two together. So I have my auditor telling me if I can't tell them where these assets are, I'm going to have to write them off. My systems do not appear to be talking to each other, even though there's an interface built. I would spend, 6 to 9 months out there working with this client. 2/3 to 3/4 of that time was spent just getting the data, cleaning the data, understanding the data, getting people to tell me how to understand the data that they gave me and how to clean it so that then I could analyze it and give it back to them. The analysis was actually easy. The pain, the challenge, the difficulty was in getting the data to a clean state. That has been and probably always will be the biggest challenge. Why is this a challenge? This is a challenge because we do not have systems thinking in many organizations to a degree necessary to enforce the data hygiene we need in order to do the analysis and, frankly, run operations the way we want to, the way we should, the most effective, cost-effective, efficient way. I'm going to tell you about AI in a few minutes, and we'll talk about that. But underlying all of this is a need for not just data governance, right? Data governance is table stakes. It's the bare minimum. You need to have order. You must have a stable data store that is able to check itself, that is able to spot outliers before they cause problems, that is able to reconcile. I mean, at a very basic level, do you have all of your data? Is your data complete and accurate for any process you're going to run on it? And if it's not, you need to fix that before you can use any of these tools, because none of these tools will work well on bad or ambiguous data. The good news is AI can help with that. And that is where I will argue AI is actually a fundamental transformative technology. In the past, any technology we brought to bear on data issues, it was something that we would have to go in and the thing would crash out, either wouldn't finish, we try to reconcile and we couldn't, we'd have to go back to the business, we would have to talk to a lot of different stakeholders about what was going wrong. We spent a lot of time back and forth. Hey, I'm an internal auditor. I just got a bunch of information from the business and I can't make heads or tails of it. I can't reconcile it. What's going on? You end up not really wasting time in terms of hours, right? You may spend more hours than you should on it, but what you really lose is calendar time, right? I get this data, I spend a couple hours on it, I realize I have questions, I put together a nice tight list of questions, send it back to my business partner. They go away for a day, a week, depending how long can they get away with it? What else do they have going on? Is it year end? Eventually they come back to me. I've got my boss coming to me and saying, hey, how come this audit is taking so long? How come this analysis is taking so long? Do I need to escalate this? Do I need to have the chief financial officer talk to the controller, to talk to the manager, to tell you start having those conversations. You start to lose time. Here's where AI can help. And here's where I'm going to give some specific examples of what you can actually do with AI besides organize your inbox or ask it questions. I have a situation that I'm dealing with right now that we received a bunch of data for a particular test that we're doing. It was raw data dumped straight from a system that was obtained through an API. And when we got the data, we sat down to try to do your traditional reconciliation. Do we have completeness and accuracy of the data? Does it truly represent the function that we're looking at? What in the data looks strange? And like every other data set we've ever gotten, there were things in it that looked strange. Now, normally we would make a list of the things that we could not figure out, and we would send it back to the business owner and give that person, hey, can you get this back to us in a week and tell us what, can you explain these discrepancies, these reconciling items? We use Claude Code where I work right now. So I asked Claude Code, I said, hey, Claude, and it took a few iterations of getting through this, because with AI, and this, I want to stress this, you've all probably worked with AI in some way, shape, or form. You pull up the app, you have a nice conversation with it. It sounds great, but AI is not, it's neither artificial nor intelligent. It's math with some user interface sort of sugar on top of it to deal with you in a way that makes you comfortable. And that's great for an app, but it's not so great for doing business analysis, because you can never forget that what you're talking to is just an engine that is taking every word you tell it, everything you say, all the sentences you write, turning it into vectors, and then doing some fancy math to try to come back with things that look as much like what you gave it as it thinks it can get. So working with Claude, said, hey, Claude, look at this data, and I'm trying to reconcile this to that. Can you make a list of categories of reconciling item that would account for this and that, and then explain to me exactly how you came up with each and what I should ask the business owner about? And then, Claude, look at your own analysis and tell me where you went wrong. AI, unlike human beings, does not have an ego. It does not care about its own mental well-being, because it doesn't have a mental well-being. You can't insult an AI. The AI will do exactly that, and did do exactly that. And when I get an answer that says, hey, here's the bucket you asked for, here's what you need to ask, I challenged myself and I couldn't find anything wrong, or what I found was kind of off the rails, or it tells you what it found, and I look at that and say, yeah, that's clearly not the case. I have just saved a whole bunch of time, because now instead of going to my business partner and saying, can you please explain this difference? I can go back and say, hey, we did some analysis and we found these different categories of thing, and here's how they're different. And we suspect this, but we need you to confirm whether or not this item is, are these valid? And then send it. So right there, we've saved a bunch of back and forth. We've saved a bunch of manual analysis of the difference, the reconciling items. And now we've got a place to start, right? Now we have a place for human beings who are smart and clever and creative problem solvers to look at an ordered list of things and say, is this ordered list of things, does it make sense? I've already done that. Do these make sense in the context of the business operation that I'm auditing? Yes. My business partner can now look at those and work on that and come up with an answer. That is the value prop for AI right there. It saves calendar time. It saves me from having to do things that I'm bad at, which is to just sit there and load the data into Excel and then sort and filter and try to see a pattern myself, right? AI can do it like that. I want to talk a little bit about hallucinations, because I know some of you are saying, yeah, but AI hallucinates. And forgive me, I don't know what the audience's level of comfort is around AI. I know that the term hallucination has been out there. It's obviously a legitimate key issue. But there are two different kinds of operations you can do with an AI, like any other tool. You can ask it to do a mechanical process. So an ETL, hey, take this JSON file and turn it into a comma delimited file so a human being can open it in Excel and look at it. That is a deterministic function. There's only one way to transform a JSON data set into a comma delimited data set. And it's very much a take the key value pairs and unlink them and unlink the list and put it all into a record and then populate the thing. There's only one way to do it. When you're doing deterministic work that should always have the same result and come out the exact same way, AIs can do the same thing that any other computer program can do. If you use Claude loves to write Python code. That's how it does all of this. So when people say, well, how are you going to validate to management that AI is doing the right thing? My answer back is, well, I'm going to go to my IT audit executive director and say, hey, I had AI transform the data we got into a common limited data set that's what we're used to looking at so we could audit it. And it wrote me a narrative of what it did, and it will write as long a narrative as you want. In fact, one of the things you want to do early on is train your AI to give you short and to the point narratives. But it will tell you what it did at the level of, I took this, I did this. So you can validate what the thing did and that it does the same thing every time. And you must do that. Anything you are going to do with an AI requires human validation. A human being has to look at the result, look at whatever evidence or workflow the AI presented, and the developer, and we are developers, that is a key skill, right? We as internal audit developers, AI developers, need to have the AI spit out documentation of what it did, evidence of what it did, an annotated, in the case of Claude, an annotated Python script with comments in every function saying, hey, this is what I did, this is what this does, this is what this does, spit out. I look at it, a human being looks at it, validates, says, yeah, this looks good. Our time is spent reviewing rather than executing the work ourselves because AI can execute the work better. Now, I said for deterministic work, that is perfect. It means your work papers look very different. Your work papers are much more auto-generated and manually reviewed. There are advantages to this. I'm sure all of you have teams that generate perfectly formatted work papers that are beautiful and elegant. You're going to have to give up the artistic impulse to create beautiful, elegant work papers. You also lose some of the messier back and forth of review notes. But you do have to get your people used to reviewing earlier. So your staff people, instead of putting together an elaborate spreadsheet and Word document explaining all these cross-references, you will have a narrative. Now, you may need to do a process flow, and many of the tools can generate graphics showing a process flow, which is nice. I happen to like process flows. Microsoft Visio was my favorite tool for years. Now we can do a lot of that same stuff in Claude. Flip side, if we are asking an AI tool to do some thoughtful work, something that is not determinative. Hey, I want you to read all my notes and summarize them and tell me what you think the through line is. What through line can I use in my presentation about AI and internal audit that's going to kind of get me where I need to be? That's different, right? Every AI model, every version of every AI model will probably come up with something a little bit different. And if you tell your AI model to think hard, it'll probably be even more different. And if you use ultra think because you just want to burn tokens, you'll get something really different. For tasks like that, AI is still good. You will still need a human being to check it. And that is really the key skill. For an auditor, you need to, every auditor needs to be able to go in and review the work that an AI does for completeness, accuracy, relevance. Did it miss anything? Did it mischaracterize anything? There is a lot going on here. For those of you who have not done development with AI, it is not as simple as just telling it to do something and then looking at the result and go, yeah, that looks good. It is an iterative process. You will spend hours, days, literally weeks on getting your project to where it needs to be. But then it is repeatable. And you will be able to use that going forward with minimal changes. I will give you an example. One of the things that we are working on, we want to be able to say, hey, Claude, we are about to kick off an audit of XYZ function. Go get the latest version of the internal audit procedure, then go get the latest version of the procedure related to the process we are about to audit. That the auditors don't have to do it. Now, it may seem like, okay, how much time are you really saving to instantiate a new audit memo? Okay, maybe an hour or two tops for if we're just copying down the template memo, renaming it, and putting some information in. It's still a little bit of time. But most importantly, most of our time, we have a GRC system where we store risks, prior audits, findings, all that stuff. And all of that is context for a new audit, right? It takes hours to days, sometimes weeks for us to track down everything that we need in the context of the process and the organization. So we can say, yeah, this audit is properly scoped. And we know that because we have all the prior audit findings from that area. We have some related stuff. There's some risk issues that we found. All of that is in our GRC system. And right now, an auditor has to go in and manually look for those things and sort of search and find. Now, all I have to do is drop 6 or 7 tables out of our GRC system. And I hate to do this. We want to get to the point where we can connect with an API. But for right now, it's easy. It takes me 15 minutes to drop all the tables out to CSV file. I drop them into Claude Code. I tell Claude, hey, I just dropped a bunch of data from the GRC system in here. Go back, look at our procedure, look at the procedure for what we're about to audit, dig through the data, and give me the list of deliverables I have and follow the terms of the prompts I've already given you that are documented in your master project prompt file. Claude will run out, and anywhere between 5, 15, 25, maybe 45 minutes later, if the network is running hot, I will get a whole bunch of deliverables with a whole bunch of pre-populated information and information from our GRC system, excuse me, relevant to that audit or what Claude thinks is relevant. Now, is it always perfect? No. But I would much rather have more than I need, because then, again, human being has to go and pull all this down and then review it. What is the benefit here? 1, we save a lot of time just in the research and the looking stuff up. 2, the auditors are not fumbling around through a web interface in a GRC tool to find information. They're looking at a document and evaluating its content. They're thinking about what the audit is. And they're doing this fresh. They're coming to this fresh. They're not, I spent days and days and days looking this stuff up and trying to get the document right so that it gets reviewed. No, I've taken all that away and I've just given them a bunch of documents to start reviewing. It's a lot easier to look at something with fresh eyes when you haven't spent days or a week or two searching for things. So now they have this fresh set of work papers. And from a junior staff level, this is great. They're not bored. They're actively engaged. They're reading this stuff. They're pulling that information in. They're learning what went before rather than hunting for it. And there is a difference. The cognitive load is different. They're more engaged and they're learning to be seniors and managers. So my entry-level staff person is going to be much better off if what they do is most of their time spent reading about and thinking about what they're about to audit rather than, can I find the document in the GRC system? We are almost at time. We are almost right at time. So I'm going to pause there for a second. I have a whole bunch more stuff I can talk about, but that was really the key. The only other real insight, the only other real key requirement, and I alluded to it before, but I want to be explicit about it. The way you manage your data matters. Because if you want to be able to do what I just described, that whole workflow of automating things, you have to have the data in a form that your AI can process. I had to teach it to read a bunch of Word documents and PDF documents so that it could pull those policy documents, because that's how they're stored, and then reference them. That was painful and unnecessary. If I stored the information in those documents in a better format, JSON files, version controlled in GitHub, I would not have to, I wouldn't have to pay the fees for a portal tool that would store my policies and procedures in a version controlled way because it's in GitHub. And second, I wouldn't have to worry about the format, Word, PDF. I don't have to get a skill file and teach Claude and tell Claude, okay, here's how to parse a Word file. I can say, here's a bunch of text, go get it, bring it back here. I've saved a lot of time. And AI being the power hungry beast that it is, I've also saved all the tokens that would burn and will burn. Even after you've trained it, it will burn more tokens going through a Word document than if you just pulled text in. All right, 8:45, time for QA. Chris, do we have any questions, or is there anything that you'd like me to go into in more detail?
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Steve. That was really insightful. Enjoyed listening to you. And we do have a few questions. Of course, if you have any more, there's still potentially some time, so feel free to put them in the Q&A at the bottom of your page. So, Steve, first one, you mentioned Claude Code when
Yes.
you were talking there. Could you give us a brief summary of what that is, how it
Certainly.
kind of integrates with the rest of AI and what it does?
Absolutely. So if you've used AI just out in the world, you probably, it's an app, right? And it's got a little chat window, and you either talk or type into it and you ask it questions, and maybe you drag in, if you're using it in a browser, you drop a file into it to ask it questions about it. Claude Code is simply a code editor backend, usually in Microsoft VS Code, where it's a development environment and you have an interactive chat session in that environment, but you can do things like drop a whole bunch of files and drop it in there and then tell Claude, hey, Claude, go to this directory and go through every file in there and do this thing to it. Think about this as you review these documents or whatever. Generally speaking, Claude Code, it's more developer forward. It is what you would give somebody who is comfortable looking at a development window. Also, Claude Code, because it's not a chat client, so if you try to put more than 20 files into a Claude chat window, or I think 20 is the limit. If you try to put too many files in, it'll just say, hey, you know what? I can't deal with this. I can't handle that many files. It'll reject it. In Claude Code, it doesn't care, because in Claude Code, you're just dropping the files into a file share and then telling Claude, hey, go into this folder and process the files one at a time. It's simply a development environment for Claude applications. It's the kind of thing too, where if you're going to be doing advanced analysis that's going to go through more than one session, and real quick recap on sessions, if you're not familiar, when you start talking to an AI, you're opening a session. At the beginning of that session, your AI has a certain amount of context. Think of context as brain power, right? Hey, I'm ready. I'm here. I'm ready to do it. Everything you tell the AI or ask it takes a little bit of that brain power for it to understand and retain, right? It takes what you say, it understands it, it keeps it right in its current context. So you can keep asking questions about what you're talking about, and it will remember what you're talking about. Once you hit about 70% of the context used up, you will start to see your AI slow down. It'll start having a harder time. Having more RAM can help this, but basically all the models will slowly run out of context. By the time you're down to like 80, 85% of your context, you basically have to restart a new chat session, and you will lose all of that. Now, there's ways you can carry over between the two, and I can talk about those if you want to, but that's really it. In a development environment, you don't have to worry about that, because as you can monitor the context you're using, and you can write apps that say, hey, go do this thing. When you start to run out of context, save what you're doing this way, and then tell me, and I'll start a new session, and I'll have you read yourself in on what you just wrote, and we can start fresh from there. Does that help answer the question?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much. Another one. So, for a team that is still working in a very heavily manual way, what would you say is the low-hanging fruit, and where are the quick wins for adopting this kind of stuff?
Okay, so low-hanging fruit and quick wins. When you say still working very manually, I assume you mean, hey, everything's in Word and Excel, and otherwise that's what you're doing. So the low-hanging fruit is taking what you already have, policies and procedures, meeting notes, and using these tools to consolidate and organize them. So when you have your planning meetings, and when you start talking to your business partners, and they give you a narrative about their process, and they give you a bunch of documents, you taking those documents and getting your AI to be able to organize them. And for starters, look for conflicts, right? Take your internal audit procedure. My internal audit procedure is 180 pages. If I take that document and I feed it into Claude, and I say, hey, Claude, look through the procedure and tell me if you see anything that's inconsistent, right? Do I talk about the duties of the CAE in one section and then contradict myself in another? And you can do that with any document. I think getting your documents, looking for contradictions or gaps is a great first step. I think it is also a great time to rewrite the documents. Hey, Claude, take this procedure document and rewrite it with active voice, removing anything unnecessary, but keeping substantive content. Anything that's in a bulleted list, you may edit the verbiage in the list, but we need the content to be substantially the same. Those kinds of things, you can get a much tighter version of whatever it is you're looking at. If it's a policy, a procedure, a memo, a planning, your planning memo, your audit planning work papers, I think those are great first steps. And it's easy for people to understand what's being done, and to then review the output and say, yeah, it's valid.
Great. And next question for you. So how do you sell this to senior management when there's potentially a lot at stake, particularly in regulated markets?
So repetition is key. Keeping them informed is key. What can it do? I have had to have the conversation about what is determinative versus what is non-determinative a bunch of times, because hallucinations are a problem. You probably all read in the paper where some AI model hallucinated or came up with something horrible. There have been some horrible stories about the misuse of AI or the misinterpretation of an AI output. So a lot of the selling of it is, one, convincing senior leadership that the tool can be trusted. And the way to do that is to evidence it, right? Fortunately, I work in internal audit, as do most, if not all of you. If I go to my boss and say, hey, here's the audit trail, right? I can start with a JSON file and end with a CSV, and I can walk you through every single step that the AI did that a human could do if we wanted to spend the time. And you can read that step because the AI will narrate at great length what it did. We have to be comfortable. So how do you sell it? You sell it by really thinking about what you're trying to do and proving it to your boss. And also gathering other stakeholders. You can't do this by yourself. This is not the kind of thing that a department can do on its own, because nobody else, even if everybody in your department believes it, nobody else will. My current employer, we decided to push out with implementing AI tools, and we have people from literally every major function in the company working together as part of a 6-month trial period where we were just trying out the tools to see what they would do. And we talk about common things. Hey, how do you get Claude to read a Microsoft Word document properly? When it gets to a table, it freaks out and doesn't know what to do. How do I do that? Having those conversations and building a pool of cross-functional leaders and doers who understand the tools and can then go back to their supervisors and explain, this is not scary. It's not magic. It's comprehensible. And it works, and we can trust it. And here's how I can show that we can trust it. And then you just got to keep repeating that message. I mean, I think that is going to be probably the greatest challenge to any of us implementing it, because it is new and it is different and powerful in a way that we've never seen before.
Great, and then I think we'll do one more, and then we'll let people get on their way. So, how would you suggest that audit leaders maintain a human in the loop oversight so that the findings can be trusted in real life?
So that's actually an excellent and most important question, right? Everything we do, and this is one of our key controls, I can disclose this. One of the things we tell our staff is, you may never, ever write, Claude said this, or I went to Copilot and did that. Because that's like saying, according to Microsoft Excel, no. A human must review every single thing. A human must evaluate every single thing that comes out of it. If they do not, they are sent back to go and do that. A review control, and I know we've all audited review controls. It's my favorite control to review, where somebody said, hey, I review, send an email that just says approve, right? Not good enough. The way you get audit leaders comfortable with this and keeping a human in the loop is substantive review. Some of the time savings I told you about that you're going to get up front by avoiding legwork, you're going to lose some of that because you're going to be reviewing more, because you've got to check everything. The good news is AI will document everything it does in exhaustive detail. And part of your adoption is going to be figuring out what level of detail works and customizing your tool, training it to know what really your standards are so that you can get what you need and no more, but no less. And then a person would review it. So that's really how you keep a human in the loop, by requiring a human in the loop to review and approve everything.
That's great. So I think it seems like a logical place to end it for today. We do have some more questions. So I think what we will do, Steve, I'll make sure that you can get a hold of those, and then we'll perhaps put something out, maybe on LinkedIn or something next week, so that people can have their questions answered. For everyone listening today, if today's session has sparked any thoughts about your own team structure, or if you're looking to find kind of tech-enabled talent that Steve has described, my door is obviously always open. So please reach out via email, and we can discuss the market or how myself and Alton can support your 2026 goals. Final reminder that we have been recording this, so we will send this out to everybody next week. Please do stay tuned for the next Alton Connect invite. We're also always looking for speakers who are doing interesting things in their own careers and journeys. If you would like to do some presenting yourself. And then finally, thank you to everybody that's logged on and listened to us, and of course, most importantly, to you, Steve. That's been great. I hope you all enjoy your weekends.
Thanks. Take care. Have a great weekend. Stay warm, y'all.
Take care, everyone. Bye.